Have you ever noticed something painful? You understand English, you watch videos in English, you read English, you even know many English words. But the moment someone asks you a simple question, your mind goes blank, your heart beats faster, and suddenly the English you thought you knew disappears. Not because you're stupid, not because you're bad at English, but because you've been learning English in a way that was never designed to make you fluent. And that realization changes everything. Because right now, somewhere in the world, someone who knows fewer English words than you, speaks more confidently than you, someone with worse grammar than you, speaks more fluently than you, someone who started later than you, is progressing faster than you. Why? What do they know that most learners don't? And what if the biggest thing stopping your fluency isn't your English at all, but your psychology? Stay with me, because before this video ends, you may completely change the way you think about fluency forever. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because fluency is not what most people think it is. Let's begin. Imagine this: a young man spends 3 years learning English. 3 years. He memorizes vocabulary lists, studies grammar rules, completes exercises, watches lessons, takes notes, buys books, saves screenshots, downloads apps. Every day he tells himself, "I'm improving." Then one day, he meets a foreign client. A real conversation. A real opportunity. A real moment. The client smiles and asks a simple question. "So, tell me about yourself." And suddenly, silence. His mouth becomes dry. His brain starts searching. He knows the answer, but he cannot say it. 5 seconds feel like 5 hours. His confidence collapses. The opportunity disappears. And later that night, he sits alone, asking himself a painful question. If I studied English for years, why can't I speak it? Maybe you've asked yourself that question too. And maybe that's why you're here, but here's the truth: nobody tells you. Fluency is not built during conversations. Fluency is built before conversations. Most learners focus on performance. Very few focus on preparation. Think about an athlete. Would you expect someone to perform perfectly in a championship game without training? Of course not. Yet every day, English learners do exactly that. They spend hours consuming English, then expect themselves to suddenly produce English perfectly. It doesn't work. Because speaking is not knowledge. Speaking is a skill, and skills are built through repetition, not information. This is where most people get trapped. They become professional learners, but never become speakers. They collect lessons, collect vocabulary, collect grammar, collect tips, but they never train their mouth. And English is not a subject. English is a physical skill. Your tongue must learn it. Your mouth must learn it. Your ears must learn it. Your brain must learn it. Knowledge alone cannot do that. Have you ever watched someone ride a bicycle? Imagine reading 10 books about cycling, watching 100 videos, studying every rule. Would that make you a cyclist? No. At some point, you must get on the bike. You must wobble. You must fall. You must feel uncomfortable. And eventually, you learn balance. English works exactly the same way. The problem is that many learners are terrified of falling. They're terrified of making mistakes. They're terrified of looking foolish, and that fear silently destroys fluency. Not because mistakes are dangerous, but because avoiding mistakes prevents growth. Think about a child learning to speak. Children don't worry about grammar perfection. They don't care if they sound silly. They don't overanalyze every sentence. They speak, they fail. They speak again, and eventually they become fluent. Now think about adults. Adults often do the opposite. They wait until they feel ready. But here's the cruel irony. You become ready by speaking, not before speaking. Read that again in your mind. You become ready by speaking, not before speaking. This single truth has transformed thousands of learners, because fluency isn't created through confidence. Confidence is created through fluency, and fluency is created through action. But there's another hidden enemy, a much deeper enemy, one that quietly destroys progress every day: overthinking. Most people think their problem is vocabulary. In reality, their problem is hesitation. Imagine two learners. The first learner knows 10,000 words. The second learner knows only 2,000 words. Who will speak better? Most people assume it's the first learner. Not necessarily. Because communication isn't about how many words you know. It's about how quickly you can access the words you know. The first learner may spend 10 seconds searching for the perfect word. The second learner may immediately use a simple word. Guess who sounds more fluent? The second learner. Every time. Because conversations move forward, they don't wait for perfection. And this reveals something powerful. Fluent speakers are not always people with the biggest vocabulary. Often, they're people who use simple vocabulary quickly. Think about your daily life. How many advanced words do you use in your native language every day? Not many. Most conversations use common words, simple words, repeated words, practical words. That's why chasing difficult vocabulary often becomes a trap. Many learners spend months memorizing rare words, words they may never use. Meanwhile, they struggle to confidently use simple words in real conversations. It's like buying expensive sports shoes without learning how to walk. The foundation is missing. And without a foundation, nothing lasts. So what should you do instead? Focus on active vocabulary, not passive vocabulary. What's the difference? Passive vocabulary is what you understand. Active vocabulary is what you can actually use. And here's something fascinating. Most learners understand far more English than they can speak. Far more. The gap is huge. Your job isn't always learning new words. Sometimes your job is activating the words you already know. And that's where transformation begins. Imagine your brain as a giant library. Thousands of words are sitting on shelves. But when conversation starts, you can't find them quickly enough. Why? Because you've stored information, but you haven't practiced retrieval. Retrieval creates fluency. This is why shadowing works. This is why speaking aloud works. This is why repetition works. Every time you use a word in speech, you strengthen a pathway. The pathway becomes faster. The word becomes easier to access. And eventually, speaking starts feeling automatic, not because you're smarter, but because your brain has built stronger connections. Now here's something even more important, something that changed my understanding of fluency forever. Most people think fluency means speaking fast. It doesn't. In fact, speaking fast can actually make you sound less fluent. Real fluency is clarity. Real fluency is comfort. Real fluency is expressing your thoughts without panic. Some of the most impressive speakers in the world speak slowly, calmly, clearly. They aren't racing. They aren't trying to impress anyone. They simply communicate. But social media has created a dangerous illusion. Many learners watch fast speakers and think, "That's fluency." No, that's speed. Those are two different things. A train moving fast in the wrong direction is still lost, and a learner speaking slowly with confidence is progressing faster than someone speaking quickly, with fear. So stop measuring yourself by speed. Measure yourself by ease. Can you express an idea? Can you tell a story? Can you explain an opinion? Can you continue speaking even when you forget a word? That is fluency. And this brings us to a painful truth most learners avoid. The real reason many people never become fluent has nothing to do with English. It has everything to do with identity, because deep down, many learners still see themselves as someone who cannot speak English. And identities are powerful. Your actions always follow your identity. If you believe you are a poor speaker, you will act like a poor speaker. You will hesitate. You will doubt yourself. You will avoid opportunities. You will stay silent. But the moment your identity begins to change, everything changes, not overnight, but steadily, powerfully. You stop saying, "I am bad at English," and start saying, "I am becoming an English speaker." Small difference, massive impact, because one identity creates fear, the other creates growth, and growth changes everything. But there is still one mistake that keeps millions of learners trapped for years. A mistake so common that almost everyone watching this video has probably made it, and once you recognize it, you'll understand why your progress may have been slower than it should be. That mistake is simple, but its consequences are enormous. Most learners study English only when they are studying English. Think about that. They open a book, they watch a lesson, they complete an exercise. Then they close everything and return to their normal life. English stays inside the study session. It never becomes part of their daily existence. And that's exactly why progress feels slow. Because language is not something you visit. Language is something you live. Imagine two people. The first person studies English for 1 hour every day. The second person studies for 30 minutes, but then spends the rest of the day thinking in English, talking to himself in English, describing objects in English, reading small things in English, listening during walks, repeating sentences aloud. Guess who improves faster? Almost always the second person, because frequency beats intensity. Small daily exposure changes the brain. English stops feeling foreign. It starts feeling familiar, and familiarity creates fluency. This is something many learners misunderstand. They think fluency comes from working harder. Sometimes fluency comes from working smarter. Instead of asking, "How can I study more?" ask, "How can I make English part of my life?" That question changes everything. When you're walking to work, think in English. When you're making tea, describe what you're doing in English. When you're waiting for a bus, talk to yourself in English. Not perfectly, not beautifully, just naturally. Because every minute spent producing language matters. And here's something fascinating. Your brain doesn't care whether you're speaking to another person or speaking to yourself. Practice is practice. The neural pathways still grow. The confidence still develops. The fluency still improves, which means one of the biggest excuses disappears. I don't have anyone to practice with. You don't need permission to practice. You don't need a partner to practice. You don't need perfect conditions to practice. You need consistency. That's all. But now, let's talk about vocabulary. Because vocabulary is where many learners become frustrated. They learn a new word today and forget it tomorrow. Learn another word next week. Forget it the week after. And eventually, they start believing they have a bad memory. But usually, that's not true. The problem isn't memory. The problem is usage. Let me explain. Imagine meeting someone once. Just once. Will you remember everything about them? Probably not. But imagine seeing them every day, talking to them regularly, sharing experiences together. Now, you'll remember them. Words work the same way. Words become familiar through repeated encounters, not through one-time memorization. That's why vocabulary notebooks often fail. People write hundreds of words, read them once, and never use them again. The words stay trapped on paper. They never enter real life. And vocabulary trapped on paper rarely becomes fluent speech instead. Every new word should become part of a story, part of a sentence, part of your daily speaking. Suppose you learned the word opportunity. Don't just memorize the meaning. Use it. Say, "This job is a great opportunity. This conversation is an opportunity to learn. I missed an opportunity last year." Now the word becomes alive. And when words become alive, they stay. This is how fluent speakers build vocabulary, not through memorization alone, but through emotional connection. Because the brain remembers what feels meaningful. Think about your favorite movie. You probably remember scenes, dialogues, emotions, moments. Why? Because emotion strengthens memory, and language learning is no different. The more emotionally connected you are to a word, the easier it becomes to remember. This is why storytelling is so powerful. Stories create emotional anchors. Facts disappear. Stories remain. And that brings us to one of the most powerful techniques in the world for improving fluency and vocabulary simultaneously: storytelling. Most learners answer questions. Very few learners tell stories, and that difference matters because stories force your brain to connect ideas, connect vocabulary, connect emotions, connect experiences. Stories train fluency naturally. Imagine someone asks, "How was your day?" You could answer, "Good, conversation finished." Or you could tell a story. "Actually, something funny happened today. I was rushing to work, and I forgot my phone at home." Now you're speaking. Now you're thinking. Now you're creating language. Now you're growing. Fluency lives inside stories, not single words. Not isolated grammar rules, stories. This is why children become fluent. They constantly talk about experiences, what they saw, what they felt, what happened. What they want, language becomes attached to life, and life is unforgettable. But there is another reason storytelling matters, a deeper reason. Stories make you interesting, let's be honest. Many people don't fear English. They fear judgment, they fear embarrassment. They fear sounding unintelligent. But here's the truth. People care less about your mistakes than you think. Far less. Most people are focused on themselves, not on your grammar, not on your pronunciation, not on your small errors. What they remember is how you made them feel. Were you confident? Were you authentic? Were you engaging? That's what stays in their minds. And this realization can be incredibly freeing. You don't need perfect English to create a powerful impression. You need courage. You need clarity. You need presence. Think about some of the most respected people you've met. Were they perfect communicators? Probably not. But they spoke with conviction. They spoke with honesty. They spoke with confidence. And confidence often matters more than perfection. Now, let's talk about something nobody likes to admit: comparison. Comparison destroys more English learners than grammar ever will. Someone watches another learner speaking fluently and instantly feels discouraged. Why am I not there yet? Why am I progressing so slowly? Maybe I'm not talented. And suddenly, motivation disappears. But comparison hides an important truth. You are comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. You are comparing your struggle to someone else's highlight reel. You don't see their mistakes. You don't see their fears. You don't see their embarrassing moments. You only see the result. And results are deceptive. Every fluent speaker you admire was once uncomfortable. Every confident communicator was once nervous. Every skilled speaker was once a beginner. Nobody skips that stage. Nobody. The difference is that some people keep moving, while others quit too early. And quitting rarely feels dramatic. It usually happens quietly. A missed practice session, a skipped conversation, a week of excuses, a month of inconsistency. Then suddenly years pass, and nothing changes. This is why consistency is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is emotional. Consistency is structural. Motivation comes and goes. Consistency stays. Some days you'll feel excited. Some days you won't practice anyway. Some days you'll feel confident. Some days you'll feel awkward. Practice anyway. Because fluency doesn't care about your mood. Fluency responds to repetition, and repetition rewards patience. Now imagine something. Imagine it's 1 year from today. You wake up, you pick up your phone, an English message arrives, and for the first time, you don't feel nervous. You don't translate. You don't panic. You simply understand. Then later, someone speaks to you in English, and instead of freezing, you respond naturally, comfortably, confidently, not perfectly, but fluently. How would that feel? Think about it. Really think about it. How would your life change? What opportunities would open? What conversations would become possible? What confidence would emerge? Because English isn't just a language for many people, it's access. Access to better careers, better relationships, better opportunities, a bigger world, and that's why this journey matters. Not because English is special, but because the person you become during the journey is special. Because learning English teaches something much bigger than language. It teaches resilience. It teaches patience. It teaches courage. It teaches discipline. And those qualities improve every area of life. But there's still one final shift. One final realization. A realization that separates learners who eventually become fluent from learners who remain stuck for years, and once you understand it, your entire relationship with English begins to change. The final realization is this: stop chasing fluency. Start building it. At first, that sounds strange. Aren't they the same thing? Not exactly, because many learners treat fluency like a destination, a magical place, a future version of themselves, a day when suddenly everything becomes easy, a day when they never make mistakes, a day when every word appears instantly, a day when confidence arrives automatically. But that day doesn't exist. Even native speakers search for words. Even native speakers make mistakes. Even native speakers forget things. Fluency is not perfection. Fluency is comfort inside imperfection. And the moment you understand that, pressure begins to disappear, because pressure is one of the biggest enemies of communication. Think about it. Have you ever tried too hard to remember something? A person's name? A password? A word? The harder you try, the more it disappears. Then later, when you're relaxed, it suddenly returns. Language works the same way. When you're obsessed with sounding perfect, your brain becomes tense, and tension blocks expression. But when you focus on communication instead of perfection, something remarkable happens. You become more natural. You become more expressive. You become more fluent. Not because your English improved overnight, but because your mind got out of the way. And that's where true progress begins. Let's imagine two different futures. In the first future, you continue doing what you've always done. You keep waiting, Keep postponing. Keep telling yourself, I'll speak when I'm ready. Months pass, then years. Your vocabulary grows a little. Your grammar improves a little. But your confidence stays exactly where it is. Because confidence isn't built through waiting. It's built through evidence. Evidence that you can speak. Evidence that you can survive mistakes. Evidence that you can communicate. Now imagine the second future. Starting today, you stop hiding. You stop waiting. You stop chasing perfection. You begin speaking every day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Whatever you can manage, you tell stories, you shadow speakers. You think in English. You make mistakes. You keep going, week after week, month after month. And something begins to happen, not dramatically, not overnight, quietly. Your hesitation decreases. Your vocabulary becomes easier to access. Your sentences become smoother. Your confidence becomes stronger, not because you became someone new, but because you finally gave yourself permission to practice. That's how transformation happens, not in giant moments, in small moments repeated consistently. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in a year because they overestimate what they can achieve in a week. They want immediate results, immediate confidence, immediate fluency. But language doesn't work that way. Language is like planting a tree. At first, nothing seems to happen. Days pass, weeks pass. The surface looks unchanged, but underground, roots are growing. Strength is developing. Foundations are forming. And then one day, growth becomes visible. The same thing is happening with your English. Every sentence matters. Every conversation matters. Every practice session matters, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Especially then, because growth is often invisible before it becomes obvious. And that's why so many people quit too early. They leave the journey right before the breakthrough, right before the confidence, right before the progress becomes visible. Don't make that mistake, because your future fluency is being built right now. Not someday, not next year, not when you buy another course, not when you memorize another 1,000 words, right now, in the choices you make every day. And here's something beautiful. You don't need extraordinary talent. You don't need a perfect accent. You don't need genius-level intelligence. You don't need to be fearless. You only need to keep moving. One sentence at a time, one conversation at a time, one day at a time. Think about the people who inspire you, the people who speak confidently, the people who communicate effortlessly, the people who seem fluent. They are not a different species. They are not magically gifted. Most of them simply stayed in the game longer. That's it. While others stopped, they continued. While others doubted, they practiced. While others waited, they spoke. And eventually, the results arrived not because they were lucky, because they were consistent. There is a lesson hidden inside that truth. A lesson far bigger than English. Success in almost every area of life follows the same pattern. People admire outcomes, but outcomes are created by habits. People celebrate confidence, but confidence is created by action. People envy success, but success is created by repetition, and fluency is no different. Every fluent speaker you meet is showing you what repetition looks like after enough time has passed. Nothing more, nothing less. Now let's talk about fear, because fear still stops many learners, maybe even you. The fear of sounding foolish. The fear of being judged, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of hearing someone laugh, the fear of not being good enough. Those fears feel real. But here's a question. What is more painful? Making a mistake for 10 seconds, or remaining silent for 10 years. Think carefully. One moment of embarrassment, or years of regret. Most people choose regret without realizing it, because regret arrives quietly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Years later, it says, "You could have started sooner. You could have practiced more. You could have become fluent." Those whispers are painful. Much more painful than mistakes. Because mistakes teach, regret only reminds. So choose mistakes. Choose awkwardness. Choose discomfort. Choose growth. Because growth always feels uncomfortable at first. A caterpillar probably doesn't enjoy becoming a butterfly. A seed probably doesn't enjoy breaking apart underground. Transformation is rarely comfortable. But comfort has never created greatness. And maybe that's exactly what you needed to hear today. Not another grammar rule. Not another vocabulary list. Not another shortcut. Maybe what you needed was permission. Permission to stop being perfect. Permission to be a beginner. Permission to make mistakes. Permission to grow. Because fluency belongs to people who keep going, not people who never fail. And as you listen to these words right now, I want you to imagine a future version of yourself, a version 1 year from now. That version is speaking English confidently. That version is expressing ideas freely. That version is having conversations without panic. That version is no longer trapped by hesitation. Now here's the important question. How does that future become real? Not through wishing, not through hoping, not through waiting, through today's actions. The future version of you is created by the choices you make after this video ends. Will you practice today? Will you speak today? Will you take one small step today? Because transformation never asks for everything. It only asks for the next step and the next step and the next step until one day you look back and realize the person you wanted to become has already arrived, not because of one magical moment, but because you refuse to quit. So if you remember only one thing from this video, remember this: you do not become fluent when fear disappears. You become fluent when you speak despite fear. You do not become fluent when you know every word. You become fluent when you use the words you already know. You do not become fluent through perfection. You become fluent through repetition. And you do not become fluent overnight. You become fluent day by day, sentence by sentence, conversation by conversation, until one ordinary day, the thing that once felt impossible feels natural. And on that day, you'll realize something powerful. Fluency was never hiding from you. It was being built inside you all along, slowly, quietly, patiently, waiting for you to trust the process, waiting for you to continue, waiting for you to believe. And perhaps that journey starts today.